Hey everybody, Phil here. So today I want to talk about how to adjust to a player who continuation bets the flop too frequently. This is a pretty common leak that people make. They bet too often after raising pre-flop. I want to talk about it because it's very nuanced, and the way that you take advantage is not always clear. And there's no kind of general adjustment to somebody who's c-betting too often. I mean, the general adjustment is that when you're kind of defending against their raises, weak hands go down in value, strong hands go up in value because you're facing more flop aggression. But are they c-betting too many good hands? Are they c-betting too many bluffs? Are they just c-betting too many of both? Because the correct adjustment to each of those is different. Usually, I think what you see is, somebody in a spot where they're supposed to have like a 60% c-bet frequency, they just c-bet like 90%. But actually the strength of their c-betting range is not that different. It's a little bit weaker because you only can make so many sets in two pair, and those are all already betting. But the way that you're supposed to play in theory with the 60% c-bet is that, some of your pretty good hands you check back to protect that check back range. And then you also check back some draws, and you check back some total air as well. And you might be a little bit more likely to bet good hands and to check bad hands, but you don't just bet all your good hands and check all your bad hands, because that leaves your check back range way too weak and exploitable. When somebody's betting 90% instead of 60%, they often, only slightly weaken their range. And so the way that you respond to their c-bet and the way that you respond to their check back, it might not need to change that much. And I think that's not intuitive to people because they're thinking, well, this person's betting, 1.5 times as often as they're supposed to. So I have to attack this. I have to fight back. Not necessarily. Now I'm speaking in generalities. It's going to depend on the spot. But again, that range that they're betting with is maybe slightly weakened. So maybe you call with a few more hands than you would have. Maybe you raise with a few more hands than you would have. But don't go crazy adjusting just because you see that frequency get too high. The range composition might not be that different. Now, let's say instead we have somebody who's c-betting too often because they're c-betting all the hands that should, but then also every bluff, because they're just going to take their one stab at the pot and then give up. But then they do still check, when they have middle pair, they'll check back sometimes. And when they have top pair, weak kicker, they'll check back sometimes. They have an under pair, they'll check back sometimes. But when they have air, they just always bet because they want to win the pot. Now that's something you have to adjust more strongly to, because now that c-betting range is far too weak. Their check back range is actually getting too strong as well. So what you'll see there in terms of adjustments is against their continuation bet, you need to call more often, you need to bluff raise more often. You need to value raise more often too, but especially bluff raise more often. Now, I'm not gonna make this a 50-minute video, but for value raising more often, it depends what they do. It depends if they bet too many bluffs and they realize their range is wide, so they defend more than they should, or they defend an appropriate amount of their widened range. Well, now value raises go up in value. But if they don't, if they just defend kind of normal hands that they defend, so they're overfolding, now your bluffs go up in value. Your value raises actually stay kind of the same in EV as a check raise, but you have to keep in mind, they might gain more value as calls because your opponent now has more potential bluffs on the turn and river when you check call. So the answer to all this is always, it depends. But I just wanted to give you some tools for things to think about. Oh, and the other adjustment there is, so if they put all their bluffs in their c-betting range, now if they check back, when they check back, they have, weak top pair, middle pair, under pair. You can still try to, value bet and bluff against that range, but you probably want to bluff a little bit less. The biggest adjustment and where you'll make the most money is actually folding if they bet later in the hand, because they just don't have any bluffs left. So you can actually massively overfold to somebody who's c-betting all their air once they check back and bet any later street. That's going to be very important to adjusting them. So then let's take the other example. Somebody's c-betting too much because they're just betting every pair, but they're not adding an appropriate number of bluffs. So they're going to have the opposite problem. Their c-betting range is going to get too value heavy. So you should actually fold some of the hands on the margin. On the margins, you should raise fewer bluffs for sure. Like drop, I mean, really, you should just drop all your bluff raises unless you think they're going to notice. You can still value raise just as much, or actually you can value raise more thinly because now they have more second pair, more weak top pair, things that they can call raises with. But then what's super important against them is when they check back, they have too much air. So you get to bluff turn a lot. You get to check call turn. If they start betting later, they have too many bluffs to choose from. So that's the way you take advantage of that. So really, you know, an opponent who c-bets too much could mean a lot of different things, as hopefully I've illustrated here. And it's important to dig deeper than that, but there are adjustments you can make. Now, there's a more complicated way to take advantage of somebody who c-bets too much is actually to drop some of your pre-flop 3-bets against them. So they raise cutoff, you're in the big blind, and you have a hand that you normally 3-bet. Like in theory, part of the reason those hands 3-bet is that they want to get more money into the pot than they would when they just call. But actually, this opponent is letting you get more money into the pot on the flop if you want to, when you just call than they should. So calling those gets higher in value. And then you can see if you like the flop, and you can check raise the flop if you want to. So that's kind of a more subtle or kind of odd adjustment that you can make. And you can make that against anybody, regardless of how they're constructing that too often flop c-bet range, because they're just putting more volume of money into the pot once you call. And that's what you want with your good hands. Yeah, hopefully you found that helpful. It, like I said, there's no one size fits all adjustment. But hopefully the way that I talked through each of these examples gives you an idea of how to think through and adjust to, whatever range construction mistake that you think your opponent's making. I hope you found that helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.